Tigers didn't do much of the trade deadline, but are they still legitimate World Series contenders? We talk about that and more with this fan who always believes. This is the Motor City Sports Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Motor City Sports Podcast, your home for discussing all things Detroit sports. I am your host, Lee Mosierak, and as always, I'd like to thank all of you for joining me on today's episode. So what are we going to break down today? Trade deadline was a few days ago. The episode just before the trade deadline, we kind of broke down the early part of last week, how the Tigers were kind of back to their winning ways, and we kind of projected forward what we thought the Tigers might do at the trade deadline. So today we're going to kind of dissect that. What did they do? How has it looked so far in the couple of games? We'll dissect the week as a whole, who's looking good, who's looking like they're struggling a little bit, and then we project forward some as to what we can expect moving forward with the Tigers. I'll touch very briefly on the Hall of Fame game and some of what's going on with the Lions at the end of today's show. But the majority of today's show is going to be the Tigers. But before we get started, need to remind everyone that today's show, as usual, is brought to you by Grosse Pointe Spine Center, where they use non-surgical spinal decompression with the DRX 9000 to treat patients suffering from chronic neck pain, chronic back pain, and sciatica caused by herniated discs, bulging discs, and degenerative disc disease. If you're in the Metro Detroit area and you're in need of pain relief, call at 313-332-0388 or go online at grossepointespinecenter.com. So the plan for today is we're going to break down kind of what the last week as a whole looked like. We recap Monday through Wednesday in pretty good detail on Thursday's episode. So we'll kind of group that into the whole week as kind of a 5-game week, Monday through Saturday. We are recording this on Sunday afternoon, and the Tigers have the late game tonight on ESPN against the Philadelphia Phillies. So when this comes out tomorrow, there'll be some new data that's not included in today's recap, but that's okay. We'll talk about that on the next episode. So kind of break down the week as a whole, these 5 games, how the Tigers have looked. Later on, we'll break down kind of what trades happened, how that's affected the team, how the team's looked after those trades, and what we might need to see a little bit moving forward. Overall, pretty good week for the Tigers. They've won 5 of their last 6, and this Monday through Saturday stretch, they played 5 games. They went 4-1. Swept the Diamondbacks Monday through Wednesday, and they've so far split the Phillies. A loss on Friday, 1 on Saturday, and then Sunday is the rubber match. And like I said, we'll break those games down in a little more detail in the second half of today's episode, and we're going to tie that in with the trade deadline outcomes. But so far for this week, who's been looking good? Who's been looking weak? Well, we got Kerry Carpenter back in the lineup. So he's the biggest one that sticks out. He's batting .500 on the week, 6 for 12. He's got a couple of home runs. He's got a triple. So just a great week for Kerry Carpenter. So great to have him back in the lineup. I'll talk about that again a little bit more later on, and the presence that Kerry Carpenter has, and when he's there, how that really changes the lineup. And I've talked about that quite a bit since he's returned, and I'm not going to stop beating that drum. So Kerry Carpenter batting .500 on the week. Wenzel Perez, great week for him, 9 for 19, 474 with a home run. Had that game against the Diamondbacks where he did everything except a home run, single, double, triple, a couple stolen bases. Andy Abandias, and we're going to talk about him later on too. He's 5 for 11 on the week, batting .455 with a home run. Colt Keith, 6 for 13 on the week, batting .462 with a home run. So we got 4 guys there batting in the 400s or 500s, looking great. Who's struggling? Tough week for Spencer Torkelson, only 4 for 21, batting .190, no home run on the week. Jahmai Jones, 0 for 5 on the week. Jake Rogers, 1 for 4. Zach McKinstry, 3 for 12. Matt Vierling, 3 for 12. It's not a whole lot going on in those bats either. But what I like about the way this week has shaken out is that the team is 4-1, won 5 of their last 6, but 4-1 on this week we're really looking at. And Spencer Torkelson's only 4 for 21. Riley Green's only 5 for 22. So kind of our 2 best bats on the year haven't had a great week, and yet the team is still doing great. We're still 4-1 on the week. Offense is putting up numbers. 5 runs, 12 runs, 7 runs, 5 runs, 7 runs. So 5 or more runs in all 5 games this week when the team was not scoring 5 runs on that rough losing 12-13 stretch. So that's the good news, right? The team as a whole, offensively, putting up numbers. 3 home runs from Gleyber Torres. I didn't even mention him. He's 6 for 21 on the week, batting 286 with 3 home runs. Kerry Carpenter's got his 2 home runs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 other guys have got a home run on the week. So that's a lot of home runs. That's 13 home runs put up in the week by the team. So offensively looking great. How's pitching been? Well, we talked a lot about the Diamondback series on the previous podcast, or the last podcast, where Troy Melton put 7 innings up with no runs. Chris Paddock, newcomer, we'll talk about him again later with the trade deadline stuff, but he put up 6 innings, only allowed 1 run. That weird outing from Casey Mize where he didn't get out of the second inning, only had really gave up 1 earned run, but it looked really scary and shaky. Bullpen came in, did a pretty good job to let us get the win. Moving into the Phillies series on Friday, Jack Flaherty threw another great game, 6 innings, 2 hits, just the 1 earned run, 7 strikeouts. So he continues to average more than 1 strikeout an inning. Unfortunately, bullpen fell apart that game, didn't get the win. We'll talk more about that a little bit later. Tarek Skubal on Saturday was a freak for 6 innings. They got to him a little bit in the 7th inning, but the offense did enough to make sure Tarek Skubal got out of there with a win. His ERA comes up to 2.18, trying to get that obviously closer to 2. But adding a win there, adding more strikeouts than he had innings, so 10 strikeouts over 7 innings, that's going to help him in the strikeout round. And so he's still pushing to be kind of the AL Cy Young front runner. As far as the bullpen goes on the week, who kind of sticks out as having a great week? Herter had a great week, 3 2/3 innings pitched, no runs allowed. Luke Jackson had a nice comeback earlier in the week. He kind of bounced back from his first appearance. He had 2 innings pitched, no runs allowed. Hannafy had 1 rough outing, 1 good outing. The rough outing was made worse by his own error. That kind of compounded that inning a little bit. Will Vest is struggling a little bit now. Tommy Kahnle continues to struggle a little bit. We'll talk more about those guys when we get to the trade deadline. But Tommy Kahnle had 2 innings pitched, allowed 2 runs. Will Vest, 2 innings pitched, allowed 2 runs. And your 8-9 bullpen guys can't be allowing 1 run per inning. That would be a 9.0 ERA, and that would obviously not be great. Will Vest still has an ERA under 3. Tommy Kahnle's getting closer and closer to 5, which we don't want to see. That Thursday night game, right? Jack throws a great outing. 6 innings pitched, bullpen comes in, 2 innings, gives up 4 runs, loses the game. Jack, so at first I thought, oh man, poor Jack, he's not going to get the win. And then I realized, holy cow, the Tigers aren't going to get the win. They come back real strong on the Saturday game and get the win. So we'll talk more about that. But kind of, Rick, I said, recapping the week, real things that we can quickly highlight on. Kerry Carpenter's back, looking great. Wenzel Perez, not the name guy everyone thinks of when they think of the Tigers, but having a great week. Andy Ibanez, I'm going to talk more about him later. It's probably not going to be in line with what I'm saying right now, but so far he's had a pretty good week. 5 for 11, home run, double, looking great. Colt Keith, love having him back. 6 for 13 with the home run. That's kind of our highlights. As always, Tarek Skubal's a highlight. Jack Flaherty, 2 great starts in a row. Troy Melton looks awesome, and I'm thinking, holy cow, we got ourselves that 5th starter. We're looking good. But hold the phone after the trade deadline. We find out that might not be the case. Bullpen, a little shaky. The guys that we need to be able to trust, can we still trust them? Or are we going to have to trust a new batch of guys? And that's what brings us to the trade deadline. So what happened at the trade deadline? What did we do? Well, first I'll say going into the trade deadline, what did everyone say we need? What did everyone think that we needed? And we talked about this a little bit on the podcast. So the common things we heard were a right-handed bat. We need a nice, strong right-handed bat because the biggest names on the Tigers, typically Riley Green, Colt Keith, Kerry Carpenter, left-handed swingers. Yeah, we've got Spencer Torkelson and Gleyber Torres and Javi Baez when he's on, sure. But our offense is at its best when Colt Keith, Kerry Carpenter, and Riley Green are all batting in the top 4 or 5 of that lineup. And that's hard to do against left-handed pitching because, as we've talked about before, AJ Hinch is a firm believer in the righty-lefty matchup situation. So if we're facing a left-handed pitcher, almost never fails. Colt Keith, Kerry Carpenter are not in the lineup. So who are we going to put in for a right-handed bat? Not to mention Zach McKinstry also, I said. But what I'll say about Zach McKinstry, he handles the bat pretty well against left-handed pitching. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but on the surface, I would say it looks like it doesn't really bother him who the pitcher is, but it might bother AJ because AJ just, if it's a left-handed pitcher, it feels like he wants all right-handed batters. So we thought a trade deadline, all right, they're going to have to get a right-handed bat. Also, going to need a new third baseman. There was a real push to get a top-level elite third baseman. That's the local radio guys here in Detroit kept talking about, man, if we had just gotten Bregman this whole season would be totally different. That answers all the questions. That gets us that elite third baseman. That gets us the right-handed bat that with some power. That's what we should have gotten. And I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's been the push, third base. So it kind of got lumped into one need, right? Everyone was saying we needed a third baseman that's a right-handed bat. That led to the Eugenio Suarez speculation, for example. He answers both those questions. What else did we need? Some kind of hard throwing relief pitcher. Maybe a traditional closer. Or maybe we can move Vest to the eighth inning, bring in a new closer that's going to get guys out, that's going to get swing and miss, that we're not going to be relying on, like a Tommy Kahnle situation where Tommy's not there to strike people out. He's there to move the ball just enough where it misses barrel, turns into a ground ball. Problem with those, funny things happen in September, funny things happen in October, where those little balls that should be ground outs hit something in the grass or in the dirt, fly off to the left, fly off to the right, they become little CNI singles. And so it's nice to have a pitcher you can just mow guys down. So the Tigers were looking for that. And there was also some murmuring about getting some kind of legit starting pitcher. Reason for that being we knew we could trust Tarek Skubal. Not sure if we could trust Jack Flaherty, although I still say there's an animal inside Jack Flaherty, and he should be fine. Casey Mize been iffy lately, seems to be dealing with something, even though they're trying to play down potential knee stiffness or whatever else he's got going on. Jackson Jobe gets hurt. Reese Olson's hurt. Alex Cobb's never come back. Matt Manning's been released or then traded. So, before the year, there were going to be 7 guys we were looking at for those potential 5 starting spots. Only 2 of them are really there, and then Casey kind of, sort of. So we need to add top-end starter to the lineup. So that's kind of what we needed. Well, what did we get? Well, we got Chris Paddock a few days before the deadline. At first, I thought, what's this all about? Then he actually has a great game. So I thought, okay, cool. He can fill in that spot. We lost Reese Olson and we lost Jackson Jobe. And so we can get Troy Melton fills in one of those spots. Now we've got Chris Paddock to fill in the other spot. Okay, let's see how this goes with our new 5 starters. Also picked up Charlie Morton, Rafael Montero, late the night before the trade deadline, Paul Sewald and Kyle Finnegan. Paul Sewald, I think, is kind of funny because he's injured. And our injury report is full of great relief pitchers that just aren't healthy yet. That if they would just be healthy, we'd be fine. So we're counting on Paul Sewald to be healthy by mid-September for a playoff push. Well, you could say the same thing about Jason Foley, about Alex Lang, about Ty Madden, about Sean Gunther, about a bunch of guys that we've got on that injury report that are bullpen guys. So we've already got injured bullpen guys that if they're healthy will be all set. So the Paul Sewald one doesn't make sense to me. I know he's a swing and miss guy, so maybe that's the hope he gets healthy, he comes in, but so is Alex Lang. So if Alex Lang's healthy, he can do that. So that one I just didn't get the point of. We've already got a ton of injured pitchers. Rafael Montero, a lot of these guys too, they just have high ERAs. And you look at their stats, it's like comparing them to our guys, it's like, well, we're stressed out because Tommy Kahnle's got an ERA that's climbed into the 4s and climbing towards the 5s. So why are we trading for guys with ERAs already at the 5s? And I would guess the hope would be Chris Fetter's a magician. And once Chris Fetter gets his hands on these people, then they're going to be a different kind of player. I guess, a different kind of pitcher. So Chris Paddock, again, one of those guys with a high ERA, comes in his first outing, does great. So we needed a right-handed bat for when we face left-handed pitching. We needed a top-level third baseman. We needed a hard-throwing relief pitcher. We needed a top-end starter. What did we get? We got 2 okay starting pitchers and 3 okay relief pitchers. One of them is injured. I don't know that we really fit any of the 4 things that most fans would say we wanted or needed. Now, I'm a little bit on the fence because I'm the one that kind of said all along, I don't want Zach McKinstry getting bumped. So I wasn't that on board with getting a new third baseman. I did think adding some kind of right-handed bat might work, and if that meant it was also a third baseman, then okay, we can move Zach around. I didn't think starting pitching was going to be a thing. There was a joke earlier in the year about Paul Skeens might be up for a trade because the Pirates were already throwing in the towel at being able to keep him. And I thought, well, gee, if we could pair up Paul Skeens and Tarek Skubal, then okay, fine, yeah, grab him. But other than that, I didn't see any starting pitchers that would really move the needle enough to make any sense. The relief pitcher, there were guys out there, though, for relief pitchers. Duran was out there, Bednar was out there before the craziness happened in Cleveland. Class A was out there, and it seemed like we really didn't have a chance for any of those guys. Now, why didn't we have a chance? What's come out a little bit is that the word is out amongst the rest of Major League Baseball. The Tigers are tough to deal with. Scott Harris is tough to deal with. They don't want to negotiate. They don't want to give up anything. And there was word in there that I saw one, I think it was Jeff Passan reported that if we wanted to trade Briseño, we could have got Bednar, but the team wasn't going to part with Briseño. And I said that a week ago. I said the Tigers' deep farm system is going to hurt them when it comes to this trade deadline, because teams are going to look at that 3 to 5 top prospects in the Tigers pipeline and say, well, you want our guy, we want one of those prospects. And the Tigers are going to say, no way. We're not giving you one of those guys. We'll trade something further down, but we know these 5 guys are great. And I knew there was no way Briseño, McGonigal, or Clark were getting traded. It wasn't happening. And I think a lot of the team said, well, if you want a top-level player, you have to trade us that. And Sky Harris said no. And I think Chris Ilitch said no. Because if you trade for Eugenio Suarez or you trade for one of these veterans, it's not just the prospects you're giving up to get that player back. So I think that's what Scott Harris's concern is. Scott Harris is trying to keep the system full of talent for years to come. And I'll talk about why that's a dumb concept in a minute. But that's what Scott Harris is trying to do. But let's say Scott Harris finds a trade that works out where we can trade pieces that he's comfortable parting with to bring in Eugenio Suarez. Well, now we have to pay him, right? So our players make, Gleyber Torres has a real contract and Javi Baez has a real contract, but Riley Green playing on a rookie deal, Matt Vierling playing for next to nothing, Parker Meadows, rookie, not even a real contract, Kerry Carpenter, Spencer Torkelson. So all these guys are making less than $1 million a year. And so I don't see our team, Chris Ilitch, when they say, trade for that guy that makes, $10, $20 million a year and we'll pay him what's left the rest of the year. No, he's got to pay that money, and I don't think he's going to. So I don't put the whole blame on Scott Harris. I think his hands were tied a little bit, that he knows what his budget is. He's got X amount of dollars he's allowed to spend. I don't know what the X is, but Scott does. And he can't go above that. So there's probably honestly a world in which we all thought, ooh, Tigers are real players for Suarez. And in Scott Harris's mind, he probably knew that was never happening, that we were never going to be able to afford that he was never going to give up the pieces that Diamondbacks would want. But then we found out that the Diamondbacks kind of realized the market didn't materialize, and the Mariners got Suarez for next to nothing. So I think, well, we had pieces that weren't our big 3 that were more valuable than what the Mariners gave up. So what's going on? That's what takes me back to, I think it was also the money. That the Tigers were not going to be willing to pay Suarez his contract for the rest of this year. And that's not a Scott Harris problem. That's an ownership problem. So that's one reason why we didn't kind of get what we wanted. There are kind of 2 reasons that we didn't get what we wanted. One, Scott Harris not wanting to deal with the pieces. Chris Ilitch not wanting to deal with the money. The pieces part frustrates me. None of these guys are guaranteed to be great. We're all in on Briseño, McGonigal, and Clark. It's like we've got them sketched in to be 2028 All-Stars. They're playing Double A. They just went from high A to Double A. They haven't stepped foot in Toledo yet. Haven't stepped foot in a Major League Baseball game yet at the high professional level with the Detroit Tigers or with anyone. And we are putting a lot of chips in that. Now, those are the same chips that we put into Spencer Turnbull and Matt Manning and Casey Mize 4 years ago. And that didn't pan out. I remember, a general manager or 2 ago when Nick Castellanos and Avisail Garcia were the 2 bells of the ball in our system. And Nick Castellanos was close to coming up. Avisail Garcia gets brought up. He ends up playing great. And the Tigers trade him. And I remember being upset. I mean, it was a trade that traded him for Jose Iglesias because Johnny Peralta was hurt. I'm doing this off memory, so I hope I'm not wrong. But I remember at the time being bummed out that oh man, you're giving up our future for this better workout. No, that didn't matter. Castellanos has had a nice run. Garcia played, had a nice run. None of these guys are Hall of Fame players. And even when they got Jose Iglesias back, he's managed to stay in professional baseball and get some good run. Not a Hall of Fame player. So we put too much stock into these pieces and refuse to do trades that can help the team now. So that upsets me. Now, I'm not saying I would have given up Briseño, McGonigal, or Clark either. But the idea that Scott Harris says, oh, no, we had to protect for the future. Well, how about you protect for the now? We have the best pitcher in all of baseball, potentially one of the best pitchers in the history of professional baseball on our team right now. And he is seeing a team that doesn't seem serious about winning. He's watching a team and ownership and management that says we want to be pretty good for the next 5 years. Not we want to win a championship. And if I'm Tarek Skubal, that's really frustrating. That tells me that you're not that serious. So any potential hometown discount, any potential knock off a $1 million a year option that might be there for him to stay a Tiger, I think is going to go out the window. If we could be serious and we could win a World Series with him and he could win an MVP or a World Series MVP with the Tigers, and then he comes up for a contract, maybe then he goes, I'm going to be the guy that wears the Old English team my entire career, and I go into the Hall of Fame with multiple World Series, multiple Cy Youngs, and MVP all with the same team. Maybe that gets him. But watching a team that just wants to make sure we're the best team in the American League Central for the next decade, but nothing more than that, I'm sure if I was him, that'd be very frustrating. So back to like what we ended up doing, what we needed. So I kind of went down the 4 areas. So first of all, did we really need that right-handed bat against left-handed pitching? So that's what we all kept arguing, right? We need a right-handed bat. We need a right-handed bat. We need a right-handed bat. And then the trade deadline comes and goes. And then the worst thing that could possibly happen happened. In the game after the trade deadline, Tigers are facing a left-handed pitcher. So now we got to do the right-handed bat lineup when we didn't get a new right-handed bat. And so I'm stressed out, and I'll talk more about how that game shook out here in a minute. But I'm frustrated about that right away, thinking, and again, I'm usually the guy that's trying to find the positive. So I'm the one telling you, I don't know that we really needed a third baseman. I don't know that we really needed a right-handed bat. I don't know that we really needed starting pitching help. Maybe we didn't need to do anything at all. But the optics are that we're not serious because we just lost 12 of 13 games, and there's no rush to correct what could have been wrong. So personally, I'm not sure I would have done anything differently. Who knows? But the last thing Scott Harris and AJ Hinch want to see when they don't trade for a right-handed bat is to see a left-handed pitcher that next game, and now we got to navigate that. But in the pregame, they pointed out that against left-handed pitching, the Tigers had the best record in all of baseball. Blew me away. So if that's the case, and you're Scott Harris, and you're being told by all the fans we need a right-handed bat because we're not effective against left-handed pitching. Well, Scott Harris is a numbers guy, right? So Scott Harris looks at the numbers and goes, who says we can't battle left-handed pitching? We have the best record in all of baseball against left-handed pitching. So why do we need to change anything? The counter argument to that is, well, we just kind of have the best record in all of baseball. I think when that game we were tied for the most wins in all of baseball. So if we have the most wins in all of baseball, it's probably going to average out that we have a really good home record and a really good away record and really good against right-handed pitching and really good against left-handed pitching because we've won a lot of games. So those games are going to shake out. But if you got the best record against left-handed pitching, it's hard to then say we're going to mortgage the future of this entire organization to get right-handed hitters because we can't hit left-handed pitching. So I can almost put myself in a position where I go, all right, I understand why they didn't make that move. What about third base? And did we need a new third baseman? Well, our third baseman is Zach McKinstry. Zach McKinstry was an all-star. So we have an all-star third baseman. Mind you, a left-handed hitting third baseman that can hit left-handed pitching fairly well. He doesn't seem intimidated by it. So you look at that and go, well, why are we going to mortgage the future on a new third baseman? We have an all-star third baseman. What do we? Yeah, sure. If a great third baseman falls into our lap, all right, fine, we've got one. But why would we trade for a new one and push our all-star third baseman off to the bench when he's been performing well enough? So again, I can see where Scott Harris gets then goes, well, I don't need a right-handed bat. I don't need a third baseman. I'm fine there. Next. So let me get to the relief pitcher. This is a tough one. So Duran and Bednar were both available. Now, Bednar had a rough outing right after the trade deadline, so that doesn't look great. But I really feel like the Tigers could have done something to get one of those guys. Now, Kyle Finnegan has one outing for us so far. Looks great. But the one thing I would have really got behind them doing was getting a real legitimate relief pitcher. Because then you're not really immediately kicking someone out. Like you bring in Suarez, you're telling Zach McKinstry you're gone. not that you're gone, but that your services are no longer needed the way they were needed before. That can shake up a locker room. That can shake up a clubhouse. That can shake up a team. But if you get a new relief pitcher, well, there's 6, 7, 8 spots in that bullpen. That group of guys is constantly rotating, optioning guys down, bringing guys up. Someone's middle relief, then he becomes a leverage guy. Then he's an end of the game guy. Then he's usually used as an opener. Those guys, their roles in that bullpen is constantly changing. So you bring in one new relief pitcher that's an animal, that's a real shutdown, Ricky Vaughn type deal from Major League, and you bring him in out of the bullpen, bringing Mariano Rivera out of the bullpen. All right, now that's a nice back end. Then we kind of move everyone down a little bit, and that's great. But I think they looked at that and said, well, Clase is obviously gone. For Bednar, the word is they wanted Briseño, and there was no way that was happening. And then Duran being an in-division trading partner in the Twins, maybe that makes it a little more complicated. I'm not sure. Twins were sending everyone away, so maybe that would have been a possibility. But you look at what was there and go, maybe Kyle Finnegan was the next best option. All right. And then starting pitcher. Well, Tarek Skubal and Jack Flaherty both make pretty good money. Casey Mize makes okay money. Reese Olson makes nothing, but he's injured now pretty much for the year. So I think that their plan was, well, they're not going to bring in someone that gets a lot of money. That's not, again, back to what I said earlier, that's just not really an option. Overpaying guys? No way. This team's not doing that. So what other options did they have? And I think I'm okay with what they did so far. Bringing in Chris Paddock in the game he had was great. I'm nervous about going forward because now it looks like Charlie Morton's going to fill in that 5th spot and take it away from Troy Melton. So it looks like it's going to be Tarek, Jack, Casey, Paddock, and Morton, as long as Casey stays healthy. And that I don't like because I really wanted to see. Melton had, he threw 7 innings that were ridiculous last week. And the week before that, he had 2 bad innings and 2 great innings and 1 okay inning. So this is netting out to where he's thrown 12 innings and 9 of them have been phenomenal and only 2 have been bad. And those are his first 12 innings in professional baseball. So I think he could actually be something. I think now the goal is moving him to the bullpen. He throws hard. Maybe he could eat up some innings if we have to. But I would have loved to see him get a run. Starting pitching, I think they're comfortable with Tarek Skubal and Jack Flaherty being the head of that, and then kind of figuring out the rest. We don't need 5 starters come playoff time. We really just need 4. So they're hoping Casey Mize figured this out. Chris Paddock, Charlie Morton, whichever one of those settles in as an okay number 4, great. The other one can go to the bullpen for the playoffs, and they're happy. So when you look at the 4 needs, right-handed bat, third base, relief pitcher, starting pitcher, I'm okay that we didn't mortgage a future for right-handed bat. I'm okay we didn't do it for third base. I'm okay we didn't bring in any other level starting pitcher. But I would have liked to see more with relief pitching. So that kind of wraps up my quick idea of what the weeks looked like so far, including the trade deadline. What we're going to do after the break is talk about those 2 games specifically from the weekend against the Phillies and what the team looked like coming right out of that trade deadline and now what the team's going to look like moving forward. So we'll pick up with that right after the break. You're listening to the Motor City Sports Podcast. Welcome back to the Motor City Sports Podcast. Before the break, we were talking about the Tigers, of course, what the Tigers have looked like in the last week, what the Tigers did at the trade deadline, how I'm feeling about what the Tigers did at the trade deadline. Did they do enough? And I know the main consensus through most fans and even national reporters, I know Ben Verlander talks a lot about this. He has a close connection with the Tigers because obviously he played in the system. His brother was here for so long. And he kind of just talks about how they just didn't do enough. Kind of middle of the road. Are they the biggest loser when it comes to the trade deadline? No, but they just didn't do enough. And that seems to be the consensus. Fans are upset they didn't bring in the big name guys. I'm usually much less chaotic about that. I'm the more supportive fan, I guess you could say. But there were some things I wished I'd seen them do. Did it happen? No. Do I think that means they're not good? No. I still think the Tigers are obviously the best team in the American League Central. Their 2 biggest competitors gave up everyone. So I can't imagine the Twins or Cleveland make a push here. So the Central's pretty good wrapped up. The Yankees were considered our biggest foe in the American League. The Yankees are totally falling apart. So now, yeah, we got the Blue Jays, the Astros, maybe the Mariners come on strong to look at. But in the American League, I think we're looking good. And then really no one that's the top of the pile in the National League makes me nervous. I'm not worried about the Brewers or about the Cubs. Dodgers aren't any better than we are right now. So I'm fine. I don't think that we're not World Series contenders. But then trade deadline goes. When we get that first, we don't play Thursday. So we got a game on a Friday. All right, let's see what's going to happen. What's this new team look like after the trade deadline? And of course, we have to face a left-handed pitcher. So what do we do with the lineup? Well, we've got Jahmai Jones leading off and Andy Ibanez batting third. Now, I know that I had said earlier, Andy Ibanez had a great week, 5 for 11, home run, double. Great week. Andy Ibanez has this lore around him of just a left-handed pitcher killer. I know that's the thing. Last year in the playoffs, comes up with that big hit. But, it's Andy Ibanez. And again, I love our players. I don't like to discredit any of them. They're all 10 times baseball player I ever was or ever will be. And I'm constantly impressed by their ability, and I respect them all more than words can say. I don't like trashing anybody. But to me, when I look at a lineup that's got Jahmai Jones batting leadoff, I just think it's an unserious team. It's the eye test. I know some number. I go, Andy Ibanez, you might tell me the numbers show he's 5 for 11 this week with a home. That's great. But he shouldn't be batting in the 3-hole. Andy Ibanez is the guy you've got for if Jace Young earned that. If Jace Young had come out of spring training as our third baseman, a left-handed hitter, pretty great defensively. He starts the game. Bullpen comes. The other team's bullpen brings in a left-handed specialist. He's going to get Jace Young out. Then you bring in Andy Ibanez. So the last few innings, he gets that at bat against a left-handed pitcher. He goes out to third base. He's going to do fine at third base. That's the spot I see Andy Ibanez. Jahmai Jones, something similar. Let's say we've got Parker Meadows and he's playing center field. And eighth inning rolls around, close game. Other team brings in a left-handed pitcher, and Parker Meadows is due up. You bring in Jahmai Jones off the bench, you get him an at-bat against a left-handed pitcher. That's the way I see those two guys being used. They're phenomenal baseball players. They're in Major League Baseball for a reason. These guys are not bums. I'm not saying that the way some radio personalities will recklessly say. These guys are not bad baseball players. But to me, as for a World Series contending team, Jahmai Jones batting leadoff and Andy Ibanez starting in the 3-hole looks very unserious. But that's the same game where in the pregame they talked about how the Tigers have the best record in all of baseball against left-handed pitching. So I thought, all right, don't panic. Sit back, watch the game. Let's see what happens. Well, what happens is team gets out to a lead. Jack Flaherty throws great. Jahmai Jones 0 for 3. Andy Ibanez 0 for 4. So those two guys in to play against left-handed pitching combined 0 for 7. So was it really worth not having Colt Keith in the lineup? Was it really worth not having Kerry Carpenter in the lineup? That's been my opinion all along. That I believe Colt Keith and Kerry Carpenter are good enough to hit left-handed pitching. They're just not getting the reps. And you can't mimic that in the cage with a coach who throws left-handed. They need game reps. And Kerry Carpenter this week laced a base hit off a left-handed pitcher, which I was very happy to see. They need reps at this because I still believe that Colt Keith, if you had Colt Keith and Kerry Carpenter in those two positions, those two spots, they're not going to combine 0 for 7. It's not happening. So I really wish if we didn't trade for the new stud right-handed bat, let our stud left-handed hitters get the reps. But so how'd that game shake out? Again, Tigers get off to a nice lead. Jack exits with a runner on. Bullpen comes in. Tyler Holton, I believe it was, comes in, gives up a run. Bullpen as a whole pitches 2 innings, 6 hits, 4 runs, plus allowing in the one of Jack's runners that they inherited. Tigers end up losing the game. And so this game to me was Scott Harris's worst nightmare. Everyone was saying he needed a right-handed bat. Everyone was saying he needed relief pitchers we could really hang our hat on and really trust and really lean against in high leverage situations. Didn't get the right-handed bat, so we threw out our version of the right-handed bat, Jahmai Jones, Andy Ibanez, 0 for 7. Didn't really get the kind of relief pitchers we thought they'd get, but we picked up some, didn't use them. The bullpen we have 2 innings, blows the game, we lose. So that was our biggest fear, right? The fear that Tigers fans have, and really the complaint or the doubt that national baseball fans have, is the Tigers just, for them, they're the Tigers saying the eye test isn't there. This team's not real. And I've been saying all along, this team's great. This is a real team. This team is going to make a push. This team's going to make a run for the World Series. But then when I see games like Friday night, it bums me out because I think, well, that's exactly what everyone else is saying. We proved the point of angry radio guy yelling that we need right-handed bat, angry radio guy yelling that we need better relief pitching. A game like Friday happens, and it's hard for me to look those people in the eye and say, no, you're wrong. The team knows what they're doing. So that game was really frustrating. 4-game winning streak snapped. Yeah, we're not going to win every game, but I really thought Jack Flaherty threw great. We jump on them. We get, the offense does enough, I think, to win that game, even with the two guys going 0 for 3, 0 for 4. But then bullpen again, same story from previous weeks. Doesn't hold it down, doesn't get the win. So tough game. Sky Harris, worst nightmare. He didn't do the things fans wanted him to do, and it bit us in the butt the first chance it had. That brings us to Saturday night, where Tarek Skubal's got to do everything again. It seems like he's always coming in the day after a loss, so he's got to get us back on the right track. And just a stud. His first 6 innings was just an absolute monster. And I wondered if they'd run him out there in the 7th because AJ doesn't use up a lot of pitches, doesn't overly stress these guys, tries to get them out before they get themselves in trouble because he doesn't like to let them get themselves out of trouble. So he tries to be just before that. And with Tarek, I'll give him credit. He sent Tarek out to the 7th inning. Tarek struggled a bit. They popped him for 3 runs. Gets out of the 7th inning. Okay, we're fine. Offense did great that game. Colt Keith and Kerry Carpenter back in the lineup. Colt Keith as leadoff, goes 3 for 5 with the home run. Kerry Carpenter in the 3-hole, 1 for 3 with the home run. Great to have Colt Keith and Kerry Carpenter back in the lineup. You can't keep those guys on the bench. I get maybe you want to keep one down if you're facing a left-handed pitcher and have that one guy in your back pocket for when the other team brings in a right-handed relief pitcher. Then you can pop Kerry Carpenter or pop Colt Keith in that perfect spot where you want them. But starting a game with Colt Keith and Kerry Carpenter on the bench is 2 great hitters. Just is really tough for me to get behind. And that's what we did on Friday, and I think that partially led to the loss. But having Colt Keith and Kerry Carpenter back in that game on Saturday afternoon just feels different. It feels like a real competitive World Series caliber team. Those 2 guys are great hitters. So I continue to say, if we weren't going to trade for the stud right-handed bat, right-handed hitter who's in at 30 or 40 home runs or 50 home runs, then let our guys who are great left-handed hitters go out there and hit against a left-handed pitcher. And I believe they are good enough to figure that out. They just need the reps. How'd the rest of that game go? Well, we turn the bullpen over to Will Vest, who gets 2/3 of inning, but struggled. Will Vest struggled a couple games in a row now. 3 hits, gives up 2 runs. Have to bring in Kyle Finnegan at the end of the 8th inning to get us out of that. Then he comes out, gets the whole 9th inning as well, gets a 4-out save. So now I'm a little nervous because Will Vest was the guy we could really count on. So I think the plan when we got Finnegan was, okay, cool, we'll move Vest down to like an 8th inning guy. And that gives us some flexibility for a 7th inning guy. So if we get a starter that goes 6 innings, we're good to go. And now it's like Vest in this, it's only been a couple of games, but like Vest in this new position of not being the 9th inning guy looks a little nervous. And that makes me nervous because we didn't get enough arms. Maybe Montero comes in and does something great. Maybe when we get Seawald back in 2 months, he'll be great. But right now, it looks like what we traded for at the deadline. We've got Chris Paddock, who started great in his first game, and Kyle Finnegan, who's looked good in 1 game so far. But so after the deadline, we're 1-1, and we really saw the 2 sides of that. We saw the way this team looks against left-handed pitching. I don't care if the numbers say we're the best team in baseball against left-handed pitching. That lineup is a different lineup when you don't have the left-handed hitters in it. When you remove Colt Keith, Kerry Carpenter, Zach McKinstry, they're not going to remove Riley Green, but the other 3, when they remove them from that lineup, it's just not the same lineup. We need those guys in the lineup. So I'm fine that we didn't trade for the right-handed bat. I'm fine that we didn't trade for the third baseman. I'm just never going to be fine when we don't utilize Kerry Carpenter especially, but even Cole Keith. Like last year, we were all Kerry Carpenter fans. Kerry Bonds, everyone's calling me. He has a new magic meal or whatever at Savvy Sliders. He hits that incredible movie-like home run in the playoffs last year. They didn't sit Barry Bonds down when a left-handed pitcher came up. They didn't sit Ken Griffey Jr. down when a left-handed pitcher came up. They let those guys hit. And I just don't understand why we sit Kerry Carpenter down. Again, I always say AJ Hinch knows more baseball than I know. People like to say he's forgotten more than you'll ever know, kind of thing. I don't like that expression, but AJ Hinch knows everything you could possibly know of baseball. He is the best manager in all of baseball. I can need to say that. He knows the numbers, he knows his team, he knows what he's doing. For me personally, as a fan watching, I want to see Kerry Carpenter play. Just that simple for me. Maybe it is that simple, and I'm thinking of it too simple. I want Kerry Carpenter out there. He's fun to watch. Hits bombs, hits triples, even makes a great play in the outfield every once in a while. But if you want to just DH him, fine. If you're going to DH him or Colt Keith, that becomes a problem. Maybe Colt Keith plays some third base when Kerry Carpenter DHs. But I really want those guys in the lineup. I think the team is just a better team who's in the lineup. All right, I've rattled on long enough about the Tigers. One thing I'll say, the Lions game on Thursday night kind of bored me. I knew it was going to bore me, though. No starters playing, no rookies you've heard of. Dan Skipper was out there. He was about the only regular player I saw on the field. And that's to be expected. No one really plays in those Hall of Fame games. Now we have our next one coming up. And guys are getting banged up. I saw Taylor Decker's back doing drills. Dan Skipper's going to be out for a while. Terrion Arnold's nursing an injury. So this time of year, it stresses me out, man. It's just like all football training camp leads to is potential injuries. And you're just hoping to make it through August with no one getting hurt and getting September and getting to game one with a full healthy lineup, especially after what the Lions went through last year with all those injuries throughout the year. I don't want to see us starting the year off with an injury here, but we'll see more as you kind of get through these preseason games. I don't expect we'll see many people play in this week's game, but maybe the next game we'll see a few familiar names get out there for a couple snaps anyway to get us more and more excited for football season. But again, it's summer, it's baseball season, it's Tiger season. So these podcasts will mostly be about our Tigers unless something crazy happens in the world of our other Detroit area sports. But we're just about ready to wrap it up. Before we go, I want to remind everyone to find us on social media. So Instagram, Motor City Sports Podcast, Twitter /X, Motown Sports Pod, YouTube, Motor City Sports Podcast. Find us wherever you can. Like us, 5-star it, review it, rate it, all those fancy terms. Subscribe to it, tell your friends, etc., etc., so we can get this thing to continue to grow and find more and more people as we, for the most part, talk positively about our Detroit sports, because if you're not having fun watching this stuff, what are you doing? It's supposed to be fun. And while games like Friday get me a little stressed out, at the end of the day, it's baseball. I love sports. I love our Detroit sports team. So that's going to wrap it up here for me. Again, thanks everyone for watching. Thanks everyone for listening. This has been the Motor City Sports Podcast.